Macron was indeed born a male, then why would there ever be any reason for us to accept anything the mainstream media tells us ever again? There's no reason for us to ever listen to them now. There'd be no reason for us to ever listen to anything they actually told us in the past, because now we realize that they're telling big lies, huge lies. That is the true significance of this lawsuit, and I want to underscore that. This brings me to the next point, because this is insane. One of these internet sleuths, right, a Twitter user who goes by the handle Sagan Army, which, by the way, is a nod to this guy Zoe Sagan, sorry if I'm not saying that your last name right, but this was one of the earliest accounts that I was following and that was investigating. Zoe Sagan's account, Brigitte, the background was saying something does not make sense here, and then what happened was his entire account got banned on X because of French laws. They can just like disappear you if they want to. And so this person is using that name, Sagan Army, where people were like, nope, we're behind Zoe Sagan, and they tweeted this thread. And I'm obviously interpreting this for you guys, translating this rather into English because this thread was in French. It reads, coincidences are hard to kill. Brigitte Trogneux arrives at La Providence, that's the school that Emmanuel went to, in Amiens in 1991, and then leaves for Paris in 2007. Okay, that's an established fact. A certain Elaine Trogneux is appointed the head of the Somme Departmental Archives in Amiens from 1992 to 2008. So almost virtually the exact same time you get this person, Elaine Trogneux, who's being appointed to the Departmental Archives in Amiens. Continue. The thread continues. It is this same Elaine Trogneux who will digitize documents from the Courier Picard on behalf of the Departmental Archives. It is strange, however, that the page on the archive's website that referenced his appointment is no longer available. So this person is saying, oh, by the way, someone named Elaine Trogneux was in charge of the archives, the digital archives in Amiens during this time, and rather mysteriously, you used to be able to find this on the websites, the archive websites, but they've gotten rid of that. But then this user continues, fortunately, the internet forgets nothing, and this web capture is indeed authentic. So if you click this link, it goes on Wayback Machine. If you guys are not familiar with Wayback Machine, essentially, it archives the internet, right? So you can just take a photo of something a different year or ask it to archive a certain hyperlink, and it will capture it. So fortunately, they had captured, somebody on Wayback Machine had captured this entry on the Amiens archive website, and here is what it reads. I'm showing you this here. It reads, the Picard Courier newspaper is telling you that from the time frame, they're archiving stuff from the Picard Courier newspaper from 1945 to 1960. And then it tells us that content, the documents that they have, documents from the Courier Picard borrowed by Elaine Trogneux, who's a teacher, from the premises of the journal and lent to the departmental archives of the Somme to be digitized and put online. The originals are not kept in the departmental archives of the Somme. So what they're saying here is what we had digitized was given to us by Elaine Trogneux. We don't have any originals. We digitized it. This teacher gave it to us. Oh, wow. Okay. And the period of time, of course, includes this birth announcement. Like Elaine Trogneux, Elaine Trogneux was the person that was in charge of this, and he was the one that provided this document. Now, this Twitter user goes on and says, it will be noted that this document, included in the complaint by the Macrons against Candace Owens, which is a digitized press clipping from the Courier Picard dated April 15th, 1953, was likely digitized by the mysterious Elaine Trogneux, as he handled the years 1945 to 1960. Now I'm going to explain to you the next tweet that's about to come up. So there is this app and this website that is in France that is called Babelio, where users can effectively just upload book titles and review them. It's almost like, think of it as a social network for book reviews, like Yelp for book reviews almost, okay? And on this website, Elaine Trogneux has a profile. So the Twitter user continues. And what can be said about the intriguing comment posted in 2017 on Elaine Trogneux's Babelio page, years before the Brigitte Macron-Madame affair, even before Macron's election? And then they show you a screenshot, you can see here, of Elaine Trogneux's Babelio profile, and it reads, c'est ça la géopolitique. And that means this is geopolitics. Could be nothing, but that's what it says, it's geopolitics. And so the Twitter sleuth then asks the question, what connection is there between an unknown provincial archivist teacher and geopolitics? This is supposed to be a teacher that is interested in history and and yet he's mentioning geopolitics on his Babel profile. Okay, let's continue. The user continues by asking, who then is this Mr. Elaine Trogneux, who was rummaging through the same archives as Natasha Ray's friend, accompanied by a mysterious stranger with an earpiece? So then they include this video, which I'm about to play for you. Now, to be clear, this woman, Corinne, is speaking in French, so we had to use AI technology to make her speak in English, so there might be some slight, slight words that are wrong here. We wanted to make sure that you guys could hear it. And to set this up for you, Natasha Ray, in case you forgot, is the woman who has been dragged through the mud by the Macrones. They sued her and Amandine Roy for defamation. They have now lost that lawsuit in the appellate courts. Well, back when Natasha Ray was researching and everything pertaining to Brigitte Macron, she had people that she was working with, people that she hired, or maybe they were volunteering their time, who were willing to travel to Amiens to go to the archival center and to pull documents. And one of these individuals was this woman named Corinne. She sends this woman down to the archive center in Amiens to find these documents to prove Brigitte's existence or not prove Brigitte's existence. And the lady is shocked when, while she's there waiting for her documents, because they have to call you up to the counter, she hears the name Trogneau being called. So someone else with the last name Trogneau was waiting for documents pertaining to the same period of time that she was looking for documents. And she recognizes the person to be Elaine Trogneau. Here's what Corinne says in her own words. Take a listen.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of...
Your order has arrived. So the person gets up and says, this is for Mr. Trogneau's order, right? At that point, you can imagine my... So, this one, of course, to fully respect that you're saying, listen, I don't understand. What a call, your order has arrived.
Percent your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
And when finally the first archives arrive, it's first come, first served. The person in charge of the archives at the reception says, here you go, your order has arrived. So the person gets up and says, this is for Mr. Trogneau's order, right? At that point, you can imagine my ears perk up. I thought to myself, well, that's odd. It's still pretty unfortunate. What a coincidence that a Mr. Trogneau would be doing research at the same time as me. So what I do is, almost automatically, I take a photo of the person in front of me. I send a message to Natasha saying, listen, I don't understand. There's a Mr. Trogneau sitting across from me, also looking through archives, and it seems to be the Courrier Picard. And so here's the photo I took. So, this one, of course, to fully respect their privacy, I have carefully blurred out, as is always done in such situations, the entire facial area of the individual because I deeply respect their personal privacy and confidentiality. When I get the photo, I recognize him immediately and I tell her, that's Alain Trogneau, the historian who had all the song archives and the Courrier Picard digitized. But what really troubled me, beyond the conversation stopping and the way he spoke so discreetly, was that I was very surprised to see this man, Trogneau, from the first table, get up and head toward the door. But just a few seconds later, this is actually another day, but just a few seconds later, the man sitting across from me at the table also gets up and heads in the same direction for the same amount of time as Mr. Trogneau, and then one after the other, they both come back in turn and resume their seats. This really troubles me. So I don't know if, did they talk to each other, Karine? I don't know. I didn't see them talk to each other, but it was unsettling because it really seemed synchronized, getting up at the same time, going in the same direction, coming back after the same amount of time. It was really unsettling.
So what is happening there? She's not sure who this individual is that's sitting with an earpiece and has nothing, and that goes on longer, and she describes how he had no documents with him, and that's very unusual. You would never see someone, she said, at an archival center that's just sitting there with an earpiece. That sounds to me, and of course we can't confirm this, but that's probably security. That's what security does. I've had security before. They'll have an earpiece and they'll pretend that they don't know you, but they're making, looking over you. But why on earth would this guy, Elaine Trogneau, who's a teacher and a historian, have security on him, if it is security? But also, what was he doing at the archive center, getting his hands on documents that he gave the archive center? You gave the archive center these documents. They've since wiped it from their website for some unknown reason, but you should have the originals at home. What are you doing here? Are you trying to intimidate her? Or you realize people are fishing around? Are you trying to remember what you gave them? We don't know the answers, but that is incredibly strange. And making matters even more strange, and I'm going to be clear here that I have not yet had an opportunity to vet this information, but it is definitely interesting, is that someone else contacted us on the tips line, because tips@CandaceOwners.com if you have anything, and they said, Candace, the entire Trogneau family origin story makes no sense entirely. Before we get into that, by the way, I do want to say that if you have any information pertaining to this Elaine Trogneau, we'd love to hear it. We've researched him. He exists. He has a Wikipedia page, actually. Scott, do you want to throw it up? Elaine Trogneau is a French teacher and local historian. He is a history professor in Amiens and the author of several books about the local history of Picardy. So the question becomes, again, which this user is pointing out, why would this person who is local to Amiens, concerned themselves with only Amiens history, be referring to geopolitics at all? There could be an answer for that. Elaine Trogneau, if you're watching, we'd certainly love to ask you questions. We'd love to ask you, actually, we could see you down throughout this lawsuit. How are you, if you are related to Brigitte? If you're a Trogneau from Amiens, I'm going to go ahead and I think it's a safe assumption that you might be related to the Trogneau family, whose documents you are digitizing at the archive center, the originals of which you should have then, right? That would make sense that you have these originals since you are a quote-unquote historian really got to wonder about these historians, right? I mean, it's like, are we documenting history or are we rewriting history? I find myself asking that question. The more I learn, the less I realize we know regarding everything, truly regarding geopolitics. Like, just as I am re-examining what happened during World War II and the press is screaming, like, you cannot look into World War II at all, I'm going, really, history is told by the victor, and then they get their historians to right? It's when the Bible tells us that Satan is the author of lies, hard emphasis on the author, right? Like, I feel now it might be a hard emphasis on the author. Who are these authors that are just lying all the time? The press and the state of everything they write just seems to be one big lie. So yes, I am going to say to the public, who is this Elaine Trump? No, I can't find who his father is, who his mother is. I can't find a thread, and granted, we just started looking into this, between him and Brigitte. I don't see any denial that you were related to Brigitte. It would be strange if you weren't related to Brigitte, because as we know, the Trogano's are gang up in Amiens, right? That brings me to this next tip that I'm about to tell you about. So this person writes us, and they were like, the entire background story of the Trogano family is weird. And they've done a lot of research. They sent me a lot. They've sent me photos, but I have to take time to vet this. But I'm putting this out there in case you may know something or want to say something. But their story, Brigitte's story, is I come from this family of chocolatiers. Like, we made the macaroons, but nobody does chocolate like my family. And even on their website, the Trogano family website, they tell the story that they have been doing this, I believe since 1897. And here's the long lineage. We've kept this lineage of chocolatiers. So this person writes me and they're like, Candace, I don't know if you know this, and here are the photos, but Amiens was absolutely destroyed by the German forces during the Battle of France. In 1940, the German forces actually captured Amiens, and he's sending me photos like everything was destroyed. So how is it that their family kept up this chocolate business all the way through the occupation of German forces? Like, did they just like destroy kind of almost everything, and they were like, but the chocolate's good. Chocolate's good, we're gonna keep that for a little bit. And it is true. I looked into just basic history of Amiens, and it is true that it was captured by German forces. It wasn't liberated until 1944, and yes, apparently the majority of the city center was destroyed due to aerial bombardment. And so they are saying that they have been pulling files pertaining to the chocolate story. They're going, even the chocolate story, there's something wrong here. And my gut tells me this person might be onto something, because they sent me, like I said, a very compelling document that I'm going to begin the process of vetting. But as we do that, as we begin to vet, I gotta put it out to you guys, okay? What do you know? We need everybody involved now. This is a global investigation, okay? Jean-Michel Trogano's military file is missing. We know that he was in Algeria, and for whatever reason they don't want to release that military file. What goes on in Algeria? What goes on in Morocco might be a place to look. You guys can go down to local centers. Maybe there's something that pops up regarding a Jean-Michel Trogano. Maybe there was a teacher. Maybe old photos. Who knows? Old students. I think we definitely need to have a look at that stuff. If you're a French person, you have a friend from Amiens. It seems like everyone in Amiens is kind of related. Maybe they have a tip. I live in Amiens, and I'm kind of terrified of my own family. And I gotta get this information out to you. Please, you guys, send us tips at CandaceOwens.com, because I am seized by this now. I wake up every day and I learn something else that is crazy. Including now that, of course, the person who digitized the birth announcement happens to have the last name Trogano and could be traveling with security, potentially. We don't know that for sure. Elaine Trogano, if you are watching, I can't find anything about you other than the fact that you're a historian. You document everything that's ever happened in Amiens. We would have you on the show. Maybe you could clarify things for us regarding Brigitte Trogano, who you might be related to, and what's going on with this chocolate factory. Like, what happened when it was being occupied, Amiens, by German forces? Were you just still selling chocolates? Maybe you've got some alternative photos, because this person is saying there was actually a different shop that was there. I don't know if that's true, but I'm paying attention, so we'll see. All right, guys, I want to throw to one of our sponsors right now. Oh, wait, first I have to show you this. Okay, genuinely, I'm not trying to be mean here. I'm not trying to be mean, because there's a lot of elements of this case that are compelling, and of course, there's a lot of physical evidence. I did someone's show earlier. I did The Spectator with Freddie Gray, and you could look at this, you could examine this story from a lot of different ways. We all know that. And the physical evidence is compelling, obviously. Siblings could look alike, but the absence of speaking about your sibling or presenting him makes it pretty shady. But there's this video, and people have been speaking about this, and I never saw it so clearly than in this video that was recently captured of Brigitte. The size of Brigitte's hands. And again, I'm not trying to be mean, guys. We're just taking a look at everything. The sheer size of Brigitte's hands, the one thing that you can't operate on, right? You can't just be like, I'm going to go in and get new feet or new hands, and you could be. That would probably render your hands and your feet totally dysfunctional. But in terms of cosmetics, yeah, no, you can't do that. Look at this video on Instagram. Wait until Brigitte is standing. You'll see that right hand, the one that doesn't have the bag. It's crazy. It is going to get crazy. Hold on one second. Right there. Look at the size of that hand. That is a very large hand. I'm gonna put that right there. That is a very large hand for a madame. Okay, throwing in some of our sponsors. Preborn, I've told you guys about them before. I'll say it again. You guys already know that I'm pro-life. See her baby. And when she does, she's a researcher named Dr. Manici, specifically designed to help your body clear harmful spike proteins. War on the press. I don't know if you are where I'm at right now and realizing that our reality really might be one big matrix. Now that we realize they like to kind of laugh at us by creating art or like, you know, putting a book in the corner on the desk like Macron. It's like, haha, it's Andre Gide, haha, what are you gonna do about it? I'm like, maybe that 90s movie The Matrix was telling us the truth and our reality is being created for us. And these stories, the more we get into them, whether it's Epstein and this hand of Midas pulling him through, pretending that he's like some genius. Or we look at Elizabeth Holmes and you're like, oh, we thought like this girl who was maybe a genius and actually is kind of a fraud, and she's smiling and she comes from a family of billionaires. Every time you look up a story of somebody who allegedly just made something in their basement, like we discussed yesterday, you know, I was just toying around in my basement fixing a motorcycle and I created Apple. What do you know? I don't know what goes on in these basements. But then you look into their families and they're old wealth families. They're old wealth families. And then we learn about operations like Operation Mockingbird, New York Times working with them to delude our minds, to delude the minds of the masses, tell us to look away from the JFK story. They're paying them, like the CIA was paying, had on their payroll, the New York Times. That's crazy stuff. Well, there's this journalist, Bari Weiss, might be Barry Weiss, I'm not sure. And we're supposed to believe this woman's a genius, okay? She was employed at the New York Times after conveniently spending a year in Israel, Hebrew University, which also happens to be where the Adelsons pour a lot of their money, because Miriam Adelson also attended Hebrew University. Anyways, Barry Weiss goes over there, does a year there, comes back, you know, Columbia University, gets her journalist degree, and gets a job at the New York Times. Okay, great. And then she does this big thing where she goes, I'm leaving the New York Times to launch my own thing, which is the Free Press. And it's obviously just a Zionist outlet. And if you're looking around, people are not being drawn to sign up to support Israel. Like a genocide thing kind of happened, and people went, you know what, maybe no. So there's been a complete collapse in support for Israel. And Barry Weiss and the Free Press, it's an abysmal performance for the amount of money that was given to her quote-unquote Free Press. The big money that was behind it, David Sachs, Mark Andreessen. For some reason, they were like, Barry's got the special sauce. But they don't want you to believe your own eyes, right? If you go to YouTube, I'm going to just show you the last videos that they've posted. And there's the reason why I'm showing you this. Okay, she's had this up, 29,000 views for 24 hours, 19,000 views in an interview 2 days ago, 6,000 views on an interview that's been up for 8 days. But we're supposed to, every billionaire is lining up to throw money at her. Well, guess what? Now they're saying that Barry Weiss's Free Press is worth $250 million. That's the valuation, right? $250 million for an organization which shouldn't even be able to employ people if we live in a meritocracy, right? You should be like, she doesn't know where she's making any money. And the idea here is they want you to believe that, okay, maybe nobody's watching them at all on YouTube, but people are reading her, right? Well, it's always the data that we can't see. Apparently, yes, there's been a collapse in support for Israel. Apparently, yes, literally every person who has a platform that is pro-Zionist has lost support and lost views. But Barry's musings, her writings, her monthly updates, or whatever it is she's sending to people, they're paying for it, and to the tune of the company is worth $250 million. Huh? The most views I've ever seen the Free Press get, okay, is this week when they announced the valuation, because everybody's reporting going, what's going on? Like, this is so fake. Hand of Midas stuff happening right here, okay? She should, if we actually lived in a meritocracy, she should just be failing. If this was actually the free market, if nobody's buying right now, her business should be going under. But instead, she's selling over $250 million. And people are looking. Apparently, they're saying Larry Ellison is interested in buying. That's what the press is alleging. Okay, Larry Ellison of Oracle. They're laughing at us. Anyways, I want to show you this really funny clip of Tim Dillon making fun of this absurdity. Take a listen.
I mean, unless we're all completely wrong here, that Jeffrey Epstein was not at all connected to the Mossad. But it seems he was. It seems he was. So again, it would call into question this relationship that we've had with our, quote, greatest ally for a very long time. That can't happen. I don't care how many, Barry Weiss, whose company's, sold out, he's going to sell to CBS for $3 trillion or something. Larry Ellison's son's buying the Free Press. The very important Free Press blog that on Substack is worth $250 million. And I like Barry, but the one that gets like 7,500 views on YouTube, that powerhouse conglomerate media company is worth $250 million. By the way, so the Tim Dillon show's apparently worth $1 billion. Hello, Miriam. Where's my money? $300 million, $250 million for Barry Weiss's blog, in which he interviewed megastar Ross Douthat from the New York Times about why conspiracies have taken the hold of the American mind. And Ross goes, well, the thing about conspiracies is there's an element of truth. Not in this one. There's not an element of truth. It's all truth. It's all the elements of all of the truth. It's not a kernel of truth. It's lots of kernels in a bag of popcorn. But there's this is what, and every article now is like, why have conspiracies? The minds of people are being warped. They're melting because of the conspiracy. So, again, and everyone talks about, like, everyone's like, oh, the grift is to go against Israel. It's like,